Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world watching this right now. Welcome to Curtain Call. I'm your host, Paula Love-Clark, and it's directed by Moinul, Hossain, Mukul, and thank you for joining us this evening. So what is Curtain Call? Well, just like in the theatre, when those gorgeous red velvet curtains roll out to play the feature film that you've all come to watch, I want you to sit back for the next 30 minutes and imagine that you are watching the feature film and the feature is a guest. And our guest this evening is film director, film producer, and award-winning author, Ben Pickering. Ben Pickering, welcome to our show.
Hey, Paula, how are you?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Thanks for coming on. So Ben was telling us he's just moved, literally. I don't think he slept for 2 days. Is that right?
Not slept for 2 days. Not slept for 2 days. You're going to get the last sensible 40 minutes out of me, and then it's 12 hours of shut-eye.
Yeah, oh, well, listen, we're so grateful, honestly. So
thank you so much for having me on. It's lovely to talk to you.
Well, you've got the most interesting background, but we'll kind of climb up to that a little bit. First of all, we're going to take you back to when you were 16.
Oh boy, is this a good idea?
Well, I've seen your window hair. Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's quite close to it recently.
I've got no pictures of when you were 16, I promise. Okay,
oh boy.
Born to Welsh parents, like myself.
Yeah.
Not from the valleys, though, are you?
No, my parents grew up in, they're from Swansea and Neath. So, yeah, Southwest Wales.
Yeah, not the valleys. So you always wanted to be a filmmaker, is that right?
I wanted to be an astronaut, actually. And then I kind of realised that the chances of becoming Wales' first astronaut were pretty slim. And so I needed to find something equally ambitious. So I thought I'd become a successful film director.
Well, why did you want to do that, Ben? I mean, why, were your parents film directors? Did you know anyone who was a film director or film?
No, not at all. My parents split up when I was 11, and I guess I had that kind of moment of adjustment that you have when you're in that situation. I was old enough to kind of know what was going on, but maybe not old enough to understand just yet. Yeah. And I kind of think that perhaps I got into it because it was a sense of escapism. I was making films using a video camera that my grandmother had bought me, when I was 12, 13 with my friends in Woodlands. I guess it was just my release from kind of real world problems in real life. Yeah. My friends went off and found other things to do with their time, and I stuck with it. 29 years later, I might be missing a year there. Still doing it.
And what were your influences? What kind of films did you think, oh yeah, I love this? Who would, what actors? Did you have a favorite film director?
I was a bit of a James Bond fan when I was a kid. Yeah, it was. My dad used to work. He was a kitchen salesman in the 1980s, so he used to work all the hours that God sent. And on one Saturday afternoon, he rang me on the landline at home, and he said, "Son, put the TV on, put the TV on." And I was like, "Dad, I'm playing." "Son, put the TV on." So I came in and put the TV on, and there was this beautiful Aston Martin bombing around the Portuguese coast. And it was the opening sequence of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And basically he said, "Isn't that car beautiful, kid?" And I went, "Yeah, but the camera's beautiful and the sunset's beautiful. And, everything that's on the screen right now is magic." And so instead of turning it off after the car got stolen by Diana Rigg to get away from this big fight on the beach, I stuck with it for the next 2.5 hours, and I was kind of, I don't know whether it was, I was definitely a James Bond fan. It was kind of, it's a bit different from watching the Care Bears, the movie, or Ghostbusters, and everything else. But it was, I think for me, it was that kind of epiphany moment where I was like, there's something different about this. There's something magic about filmmaking. Yeah. And I want to know more. I want to know more. And so I kind of always kept a keen eye on it. Always enjoyed going to the cinema. kind of always had this kind of idea in my head, maybe when I was about 11, of one day making kind of feature films, but never actually thought it would really happen. And it did take a while, you know, it didn't happen overnight, and there were kind of peaks and troughs along the way, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a bit.
We'll talk about it in a bit, for definite. First of all, we are definitely going to delve into the life of a film producer and a director. But viewers, please like, share. It's really important. It's fascinating. If you want to know what it's like working in films, please watch. But I'm sure there'll be other people watching this who would also like to find out. So please like and share this. I would really appreciate that. So Ben,
Yes.
at 16, you actually produced your first film, which I find fascinating. And in fact, just before you went to university, you actually produced 2 low-budget films.
I did. The first one was, you haven't seen them. The second one was pretty good, but the first one was dreadful. Yeah, basically, as I said, my friends went off and they did other things with their teenage years, and I hadn't quite found my stride yet. Yeah, so I carried on ploughing on with it, and ended up doing the world's kind of first kind of crowdfund for a feature film back in 1995.
Was that Days in the Smoke?
No. This is way before.
Oh, wait.
This is back in the days of parchment and quill pens and black and white TV. Okay. This was called Backstreet, and it was a rites of passage film that I'd written before I'd actually experienced any rites of passage. Yeah, it was a great idea to kind of make a film, and it was a big community kind of spirit behind it. Lots of people got involved and wanted to make it happen, but we had a bit of a dodgy investor, and he pulled his money kind of halfway through filming and just wrecked it. So basically the film ended up incomplete. It was probably a godsend because I was writing about stuff that I hadn't experienced yet.
Yeah.
You know, and anybody who's written a film or written a book and been successful will tell you always write about things that you know. And I just didn't know anything.
But you did well though. And where did you get the funding from? Because it couldn't have been easy. I know you said you had a dodgy investor, but where did you find him? How did you meet him?
Basically, I ended up on the local front page of the local paper. For this, on this occasion, it was for good reasons. And basically, they put this kind of gangly teenager on the front page reading a script, talking about this film I wanted to make. And there was no film at this point. It was just a script. It was just an idea. But over the course of the next 6 months, just as I was doing my GCSEs, so it was pretty bad timing. I ended up kind of riding this wave of this. Basically, it was a tsunami of this project as it just kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it kind of grew a little bit out of control. So something that was kind of small and manageable all of a sudden was then being filmed on Kodak 35mm film stock, and I was got this DOP involved, and it just all spiraled. And yeah, as I said, there was an investor that kind of came in with a big chunk of money, didn't come through. A lesson that we've all, it's something we've all experienced later in life, but at 16 that stung. So I had to, instead of getting a new car, when I turned 17, I was paying off some burly security guards that we'd had on set because they were banging on my grandmother's door. Lots of lessons were learned that year.
And Philip Chan, who's one of our viewers, he said he was at the studio where they filmed the first scene of Goldfinger and he just missed Sean Connery. So I think it was probably we have some really interesting viewers out there, I tell you. Very interesting. Philip's very connected. So you then went to university. And of course, because you were a filmmaker at the time, and between 16 and 18, 19, and you made 2 films, you went to study politics.
I did.
What made you decide to do politics and not media or filmmaking as other people would have done, possibly done?
Yeah, I think it's easy to kind of look at this in the context of the way the world is today. Today there's lots and lots of opportunities for people from all sorts of socioeconomic backgrounds to do well to develop careers in the media. 1997, I went to university, and basically you had 2 or 3 film schools that you could go to that were worth kind of would be great in your CV, and then you had a cluster of what you and I would call ex-polytechnics, which kind of ran media courses, which basically I don't want to be mean, but you'd be great for making wedding videos. But I didn't really feel, as the first person in my family to go to university, that me training to do wedding videos was worth 3 years of my life and the financial support that would be involved in that. So I actually had a coffee with Oliver Longcrane. His name was Richard Longcrane's son. Richard Longcrane directed Richard III and Wimbledon. Okay. Now, Ollie was in film school in Bournemouth at the time, and he basically said, look, I had a great time in film school. Pepsi sponsored my first film, my first short film. Met some lifelong friends. But everybody that was my age that didn't go to university has now got a 3-year head start on me in the industry. They've got in as trainees and as runners, and they've been carrying all the flight cases and working all the hours of God's hands. But, now they're, perhaps second AC, and they're kind of working their way up. And so he said, I feel like I'm competing with those people, plus all of the people that are graduating this year with me. So he said, if you're going to do it, just go. Just 18, finish your A levels, go into the industry and follow that route. And I was like, as I said, coming from that working class background, I didn't feel that, I felt that I needed that safety net, because we all know how uncertain this industry is.
Really? Especially right now.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's quite fickle, and there's a lot of luck involved, and anything can happen. I think we all know anything can happen. And so I kind of felt I needed a safety net. So for me, that was my second love, which was politics, which I kind of regarded as famed rugby people. I think that's kind of borne out. If you look at the green benches of the House of Commons today, it's definitely famed rugby people. Did you have 2 degrees though? Sorry, I missed that.
Have you had 2? You've got 2 degrees though, haven't you?
Yeah. So I basically did my bachelor's in politics. In honesty, I phoned in my degree because even though I'd chosen to do politics at university, I still loved film. And so 6 months into university, I was kind of like, oh, I really want to make a film. So I was plotting and scheming how to make films again, and I was starting to develop scripts and look at casting and everything else, and it started to reflect in my grades. So I ended up failing my 3rd year, and I had to go back for 6 months, and it was the end of the world for me at the time. I was like, this is terrible. I really want to get into the world. But actually, it was those were my favorite 6 months at university, and so I stuck around and I did a master's, and then I kind of ended up 3 years into a PhD. So that's an interesting tangent for somebody who always wanted to be a filmmaker, to be doing a PhD on the European Union and its eastward enlargement. It's just a crazy time.
It must be very interesting in the last 18 months for you then, watching the Brexit situation, because I'm sure opinions on it, and maybe at some stage in the future you will write on it, or you will produce or direct something on it.
I'll be honest, I mean, because of the thing we'll talk about in a bit, I didn't actually vote in the referendum. So I was surprised at the result. When I was doing my PhD, I kind of came to the conclusion that Britain should leave the EU. But for the EU's sake rather than Britain's sake, because it was just like an unhappy marriage, that we'd be better off as friends. But of course, it's not as simple as that. And the last 3 years have just proven how difficult it is to get out of that kind of, 40-odd year relationship.
And it's hard staying friends afterwards, isn't it? When a marriage breaks up, it's quite hard.
It's more about who keeps the house and the dog, and just we're not used to being an independent sovereign nation. So it's like we're having to learn stuff that half the people alive in this country today, including myself, don't remember.
And so from moving on from there,
let's not talk about politics.
Well, no, we're going to end up politics. So from there, what do you do? Should we talk about the white elephant in the room, or do you want to go back? Want to do it now?
Whenever you want to.
Okay, so really fascinating. Look at Ben. Ben does not look like what's just happened, what we're going to talk about. So Ben sent me this. He wanted me to know everything about him. So not everything, but, quite a lot about him. I'm sure there's a lot I don't know. So he sent me this really interesting article on from the Reader's Digest. And it was about a situation that you had got yourself into, and there was what's the word? There was a result that wasn't what would happen to most people. So Ben, would you like to explain about your 3 years in jail?
Yeah. So words you never thought would pass your lips. So when I was, I talked a bit about it earlier. I was at university, and I was 6 months in, and as I said, I was phoning in my degree. I was desperate to make a film. I'd made 2. I really wanted to direct. I'd produced my films up until that point. I ended up being introduced to somebody who could fund a film, and this person looked the real deal. He drove the nice car, he wore the nice suit, he was, everything that you'd expect to be, in that kind of a character. And he turned out to be a con man. And instead of investing in my film, he basically stole £15,000 off my family. And 41-year-old Ben would say, that's not cool, but walk away and learn the life lesson. But 19-year-old Ben was like, no, you're paying every penny of that back, by hook or by crook. And so, I was, I ended up having to go into business with the guy to get the money back. And he regarded himself as tax exempt, and that kind of had a knock-on impact on me and the way I was perceived. And a £15,000 problem became a £150,000 problem with massive consequences for me and my family. So basically, all resulted in a knock on the door in July 2011, and I was served 3 years of a 6-year sentence for mortgage fraud, which was based on basically saying I owed taxes. And I remember when I was arrested, I said to the police officers, I said, look, I don't know where you're coming from here. Obviously, HMRC and I need to have a chat. And my solicitor leant in and said, well, he swore. He said, shut up, you'll get more for that. And I was like, but that's what I regarded this as owing a tax bill. But other people had different ideas of what I did and didn't do. And in the end, the system just needs to kind of come out with a result. And I certainly didn't do all the things that were kind of written in the Daily Mail about all of us. But it was enough to deserve the slap. It was enough to. But
the thing is, Ben, you paid your dues. You did your time. In fact, you did quite a lot of good things in there as well, which I'm going to ask you to talk about. You wrote a book, but I'm going to read this quote, which I adore. It was in the Reader's Digest interview. It says, "Prison is the opportunity to fix the things that went wrong earlier in life, so that they don't blot the rest of our time here on earth."
Yeah.
If only there were enough people in prison to actually help those who are in prison learn that, because that doesn't always have, people, you came out, you wrote a book in prison, it's changed the way you think about things, I'm sure, and you do pay your taxes, but
you do. Everybody pay your taxes.
Could you pay your taxes? You know, so explain what you mean about that quote, because I find it fascinating.
I guess the point is, I talk quite a bit on the radio, usually when the government comes up with some harebrained scheme about how they're going to send more and more people away to jail for longer, and I kind of end up talking about the fact that, yeah, prison should exist. Prison is a necessary deterrent. I regard, you know, as somebody with a young family, at prison as a necessary evil of society, because I want my family to be safe from people that could threaten it. But it shouldn't be a warehouse of souls. It shouldn't just be this kind of holding pen for people who society doesn't know what to do with. And I kind of feel like that's where we are, because the public don't like the idea of being soft on criminals. But the problem is, the reason why a lot of people end up in trouble is through desperation. So, you know, if you've missed a life chance earlier in life because of your circumstances, perhaps you had an alcoholic father, or your mother passed away, or some, you know, some really, really tragic circumstances kind of conspired, then that can knock you off the path that you'd have been on.
Yeah.
And so if you miss just one of those steps, whether it's kind of getting your GCSEs, getting your A levels, then all of a sudden, all the things you could have been, you can't be. If you can't read and write, which more than half of prisoners can't to a GCSE standard, then you can't write a CV. You can't write a letter to an employer. You can't read documents in court which are talking about you and what you've allegedly done. So you can't defend yourself. You can't function as a member of society in the way that the other people can. And so I kind of feel like prison needs to be, yes, it needs to be about punishment, but it also needs to be about rehabilitation, because what's the point in us spending £100,000 a year per prisoner to put people away if they just come out and they don't have the opportunity to prove that they've changed, and end up doing something again just because they know that's going to get them recalled and it's going to get them the bed and the 2 warm meals a day, and not having to worry about paying rent and bills and responsibilities, because life is easier in there. It's a tragedy to think that for some people prison is the easy way out.
So do you think you, because you wrote a book when you were in prison, and it actually, it won, let me just read it, because I also, a Koestler Platinum Award for your debut novel, and that was 500,000 words or something you wrote. Is that right?
Altogether, yeah, not that book. That would be quite a book. That would be Tolkien-esque. Yeah, no, I wrote a lot while I was away. The split second I left the dock. In fact, before I left the dock, I stood up and it was a waiting sentence. And I remember kind of getting this tunnel vision moment, which sounds very dramatic, but just very much kind of focused on what was being said and not kind of putting a foot wrong and everything else, and all those kind of, you know, concerns about how people can see you. Yeah, basically, I started to kind of absorb the moment. It was a horrible moment, obviously. You know, it was catastrophic for my family, and yeah, it was not exactly the proudest moment of my life. But I kind of felt a duty to myself to document it. So they took me down to the holding cells underneath the court. And I remember just watching everything like a hawk, and it was probably a little bit kind of full of adrenaline rush, but kind of really absorbing everything, even kind of reading the etchings on the walls of the holding cell. You know, people have been there talking about what they kind of got and how they felt about it. You know, there's some naughty words on those walls. And yeah, so I kind of, when I got transferred to the local prison for my first night in, I had pen and paper, and I wrote down my day, and I did that every day for the next 1,092 days.
So you wrote a book, and then so
Yeah.
we're going to move on to the film part. So, so you wrote the book, that's there. And I understand you're writing another book called The Last Resort. But tell us about your film projects, because obviously, filmmaker, you've made Welcome to Curiosity before you went in. So I don't know if you want to explain what Welcome to Curiosity is for the listeners, because it just looks amazing. We've seen the trailer. It looks amazing. I think we're going to play it now. So we'll just play a short clip while you're... Sure. And we were talking about the director of photography. He's so good in this. It's amazing.
Bruce is a magician. You know, the film looks as good as it is because of what this guy has in his head. It was a very stylish, slick movie. And I finished filming it 7 days before I went on holiday. So it was this kind of mad, panicky rush. Yeah, it kind of it's peculiar watching it now, because it kind of, you know, where you were every day that you kind of shot a scene from a film. So I'm looking at this footage now, and I know exactly what was going on in my real life, and you know what was around the corner. And yeah, kind of for me, it's kind of it's this kind of parallel journey that was going on at the same time as the noises off camera. Yeah.
And you've got some great actors and actresses there. You know, let's see if I can remember her name. Yeah, from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
You've got so many great actors and actresses there.
Well, I'd just come off 2 Days in the Smoke. So we filmed 2 Days in the Smoke in 2012. So that was my first film as a director. And it was a fantastic experience. We got to film in London and Paris. You know, I had a £750,000 budget. You know, kind of all kind of just the dreams of any aspirant filmmaker. So it was a fantastic experience, but I really wasn't stoked about the outcome, because it just kind of, just, I mean, the release cut that the distributors kind of signed off on didn't really reflect the movie that I wanted to, the story I wanted to tell, the movie I wanted it to be. I had a very different idea of what the film should be. I felt it was a Robin Hood story of a guy who'd done a bad thing, you know, for a good reason. You know, with perhaps with some parallels of kind of how I was perceiving my life at the time.
Except you weren't a serial killer, were you, Ben?
I missed that, Paula, sorry.
You weren't a serial killer. Can we just get that sorted now? You didn't go to jail for serial killing. This guy's a serial killer, isn't he? Isn't that right? This
is true. So yeah, basically, Smoke was about to come out, and I was kind of facing what I was facing. I was like, oh my goodness, this might be the only film I ever get to make. So do I want to be remembered for this film, or this version of this film that's been released in my name, you know, with my name above the door, which doesn't really reflect how I want to tell stories. So we kind of rushed Curiosity into production, you know, from script to final day of filming within 12 months.
So good though.
During that time, we had to raise £250,000. So it was quite a mammoth undertaking. And I look back and I go, crikey, I don't know if I could do that today. You know, not the way we did it. It was crazy times.
So what's next for you after Curiosity? What's next? What are your next projects?
I think, I mean, look, just like everybody else, I'm kind of dealing with the fallout of Corona, and you know what that's doing for my 2020. I mean, thankfully, nobody in my immediate family has been kind of touch wood impacted health-wise by it, but everybody's been impacted by it. From a work perspective, and kind of all their dreams and aspirations for 2020 have kind of gone out the window. Basically, 2020 is kind of cancelled. But that's kind of good, because you know, I spent the last 2.5 years kind of working non-stop on releasing Welcome to Curiosity, and then working on other people's films. And I kind of feel like I've wanted some time out. I wanted just a little breather to kind of think about the project that I would like to make for a bit, because you never know what can happen. And I've still got stories I want to tell. I talked about it earlier. I wrote Freiheit while I was away, and it was based on a story by my business partner, Darren, that he came up with in the mid-90s, and we kind of had a look at turning it into a script at the time. And I took it away with me, and it was bedtime reading, and I had the time all of a sudden to write. That was one of the benefits, if that's the right thing to say.
Time to
of having, that kind of rigid, away at 6, not opened up until 8 the next morning. What are you going to do with your time? You're going to make matchstick models. You're going to play in your Xbox if you've been a good boy and you're allowed to have one, or you can actually do something that's constructive and kind of leaves you with something to show for your time. I fell in the latter camp, so that's why I was writing.
And do you think you'll make on from that, Ben? Do you think you'll turn that into film at some stage? If you get, because it's going to be a big budget film, that one.
Yeah, it'd be an amazing film. It'd be an amazing film. Let's see.
You want to tell the viewers roughly what it's about, if they've not heard of it, because it is an award-winning book. So just briefly say what the book's about.
It's a dystopian alternative history thriller, which poses the question of what would have happened to the history of this country and Europe and the world if Adolf Hitler had never lived. And I don't mean he died, I just mean never existed.
Never born.
If he'd not been around. So it's kind of a high concept novel, but it's very much draws from the kind of the James Bond kind of thriller, but with kind of serious social kind of messages, about things. It's tricky to talk about Freiheit without giving away too much of the plot.
Yeah, so if anyone really wants to read it, where can
they just need to log into Amazon now. You can buy the paperback, or you can get an ebook. Excellent.
So, yes. And so what does the rest of 2020 look like for you?
Yeah, back to the question. 2020. So I think this year for me is settling down, doing some writing, catching up on some ideas that I've been wanting to develop but haven't had the time. All of a sudden we have the time, and we kind of have these other worries, and that seems to kind of settle down now. But I see us getting back onto film sets before the end of the year. I know people are trying. In fact, I did hope that I would be able to make a film in August. We were looking at shooting a film down in Cornwall, and it just became, how on earth do you shoot you can't shoot a love scene, you can't shoot a bar scene, you can't shoot a fight, you can't shoot anything which doesn't involve one person shot, with a very long lens. I basically kind of take a step back, see how things develop on that front, and just spend this time developing and writing and seeing if in 2021 I can direct again. I've got a few projects that I'm exploring and developing, and we'll just see which one of those, or ones of those, make it.
So I've got a question for you then, Ben. Okay. If anyone wanted to be a film director, getting COVID right now, okay, forget this situation.
It'll be over, and we'll kind of
we'll get back to some kind of normality. Would you recommend? Would you say yes? Follow your dream. What would you say to somebody who really has a passion about becoming a filmmaker?
Anybody who wants to be a filmmaker will not be swayed by all those rational thoughts about you should get a proper job, you should work 9 to 5, you should do this, you should do that. They're driven by something else. And so my advice to anybody who wants to be a filmmaker is believe in yourself. Take risks, not stupid risks, but don't be afraid of failure. And just try your very, very hardest.
Excellent.
Go out there and meet everybody that you possibly can. Go work for free on a film, because you never know who you'll meet on that film. Study, go to university and learn to do one of the trades really, really well.
Yeah.
That's something I wish I'd been able to do. And yeah, just have faith, because it takes time. Somebody did once say to me, the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. The harder you work, the luckier you will be. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think if you carry on in life with a negative mindset, you're not going to succeed.
Absolutely.
And even if you do succeed, it'll be accidental and short-lived, because you don't know what to do with it, because you didn't expect it. I think as long as you go out there with a realistic mindset, but don't be put off by, statistics of how many people are going for it. If you've got,
just do it.
Yeah, just do it. If you've got stories to tell, or if you want to, get involved in, production design or cinematography, or the kind of the production management side of things. There's so many different parts of the film industry.
Absolutely.
Even the distribution and sales side of things is something which really kind of ticks, lots of people's boxes.
Even a makeup artist.
Yeah.
Even a makeup artist and a production coordinator.
Even a makeup artist, yes, exactly. No, it's it's a fascinating industry with lots and lots of different elements to it, it's not all about being film directors or being kind of lead actors or any of those kinds of things. There's lots of ways of playing your part, whichever part you feel comfortable, to play.
Just being involved, right? Just being involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So very finally, because we've got to wrap it up,
sure.
What has been your greatest achievement, would you say? In the last 1 years, what has been your greatest achievement then?
Oh, crikey. That is a tricky question to answer. Greatest achievement, still being here, probably. Still being here. It's been a roller coaster, 25 years, and kind of, it could have all gone seriously wrong. I mean, I kind of expected it to go seriously wrong. I actually retrained to be a bricklayer and a wall tiler. I got my HGV Class 2 driving license.
Well done.
I did a photography course so I could become that wedding photographer that I talked about at the top of the interview. And then I came back into the world, and the world was extremely forgiving, of which it was really humbling. I was kind of determined not to let down those people that were prepared to give me that second chance. So yeah, my greatest achievement is still being here.
Excellent. And you've got a very adaptable mindset as well. Because I wrote 2 books in lockdown when all my disappeared. So my books are on Amazon too, by the way. So adaptable.
And you've got 2 to my 1. So
I'm going to have about 5 by the end of the year, and a film project coming up next year. So
well, I have some catching up to do on you. I need to get writing, which is the plan.
Just do it. Remember?
Yeah, just do it. Don't talk about it. Just get up in the morning and write. And even when you're not feeling it, just write it, because there's this saying in the film industry: the first draft of anything is called the vomit draft. It's literally you throw up all of your ideas.
Yeah.
And it looks terrible, but within that is something that you can mold into a coherent story project. That doesn't happen if you don't do your vomit draft. So yeah.
Just get vomiting, everyone, okay? Just vomit. Yeah. On that note, thank you so much. You've been an amazing guest. Really, really interesting.
Thank you,
Paula. I'm sure that anyone out there listening who is interested in becoming whether it's a film maker or an author or a producer or just getting involved in film or even just trying to avoid jail, I think just listen to Ben. Please, everyone, like and share this, and pass the message on. Thank you so much. And if anyone would like to get involved in the podcast, then please give us a call. Thank you so much, Ben. You've been amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Really enjoyed you coming. Please, I'm going to close the curtains. Thank you so much.